In those days, Kingsway was much more than a track. There was no sewerage in the Shire. There was Sutherland at one end and there was Cronulla at the other end. Guyamere was a couple of shops down by the railway station. They just had a couple of shops all along the railway line. Towards the end of the war, they started to build this place. We used to make cement bricks in the back paddock there, and we'd make hundreds of them. And eventually my father got a builder to put them all together and he built this place. Oh yes, he was fined just after the war. He'd built the house contrary to the regulations of the time. It was specified how big a house you could build because there was a shortage of everything in those days. As you can remember, all the people that built garages and lived in them for 5 or 6 years before they built half a house. And eventually they had enough money or enough material to finish the house. In those days there was a lot of fibro. Well, that was the only material you could use in most of the houses. I think they'd find him about £500, which was a fortune in 1946. But he built the house he wanted.
My granny was already working here as the cleaning lady. So when we arrived, she arranged for my dad to get a job here as the gardener. We were a very working class family, you know, and most people here were very working class. When I came here and I saw the way the Broadhursts lived and met the Broadhursts, who were, to me, in my memory, so gracious and so European. That kind of thing, that cultural thing was just electrifying to me. The sense that things weren't raw and urgent. You know, that things could be graceful and you could take time to express things. That was something that was there was a lovely ambience about the house.
They built this bathroom, which was different. Whether Hazel had seen it in an American Hollywood magazine or something, but it was a sunken one. But we were never allowed to go in it because it took so much blooming water.
West of the mezzanine was the sunken lounge. That was very, very nice, with the large chandelier. They had a piano in one corner. They also, being music lovers, had a beautiful electrogram. It was one of only 3 to come to Australia and was on show in the first Australian show after the war.
After the war, the Housing Commission were on the throes of reclaiming a lot of land for housing. So they chopped a lot of bits of land off him. Then he decided, well, the only way he could avoid them was to create a farm. So he put in a poultry farm, he had people working here, vegetables, he had cows, he had everything. My father was in the shirt business. Originally it was called J.P. Broadhurst and Son. Then after the death of my grandfather it became Broadhurst Clothing Company. Well, I knew Hazel from early childhood. She was married to my father's head cutter. Hazel eventually separated from Dave. Then she worked for my father as his secretary, then his office manager, and then she virtually ran the business. Well, no, Dad ran the business. He was the brains, but she was the one that fired the bullets. She never took to me, and my sister and I think we were a challenge. We were Dad's children, not hers.
Yes, I knew the Broadhursts and was round about 1949. I would have turned 15. And I worked in their factory in the Newtown area, doing work around the office and in the factory with the shirts. To me, because I'd never seen a factory before, to me it seemed quite a big place. They weren't flamboyant people. Her clothes were nice, but what we would call conservative. They were both quite conservative, actually. I remember him in the factory, he always wore a suit and shirt and tie. You never ever heard of them going out a lot. I remember, in the papers in those days, the Sunday paper, you'd hear about, Nola Decavere and all the different socialites from the eastern suburbs, and you never heard anything about these people. They knew they were here, but I really don't think that anyone really knew a lot about them because they were private people.
Because my father wanted to be private, he put shrubs and things all the way around the property. People that grew up around this area always thought of it as the haunted house because no one could see it and they just assumed it was haunted. My father used to spend a lot of time on his own reading and meditating. He had a little building down the back where he had a group of people where he had weekly meditations.
There was discussions about seances being held in the house.
That's right, there were, particularly down in the sanctuary that he had down the back. My father never claimed to be a clairvoyant, but he had a lot of friends on the other side, particularly a little red Indian, I think he used to call him.
I trained dogs. Dogs were an important part of my life, and that was very fortunate that the Broadhursts liked dogs.
In years gone by, I've often seen Dix, in Guyamere with her Alsatian dog and her Wellington boots.
I am a palmist. I learnt from my grandfather, who was an Iroquois Indian. The word got around that I read hands. We'd have quite a few people come here. There were two things they had to be able to do if they wanted a reading here from me. They had to first be able to climb stairs, and the other thing that scared more people than the steps, the dog was going to be present all the time. I did not read without my dog, and that was Lassie.
Hazel was a great numerologist. Worldwide, she was well known all over the world. Dad was a great astrologer. Dix was a palmist, and Denise was a clairvoyant. Me, I didn't inherit any of those. I suppose I've got second sight about things, but of no greater thing.
My name's Bonnie, and I married Maury Broadhurst. He's the son of Ben Broadhurst. I married him in 1981, in May. And there was always talk about his dad, Ben Broadhurst, but I had never met him. So we came down to the little cottage where Ben was staying. He'd made afternoon tea. He made biscuits himself and coffee nicely served. The greatest entertainer you've ever seen. He could entertain young and old, say poetry, sing songs. Hazel, I had never met Hazel, and she used to look out the window at us.
I think she was a recluse. She was unfortunate. She had a dermatitis of the hands, and in those days they used to treat them with radium, and she got radium burns, and she had to always have her hands in silk white gloves.
There were also cats here. There were always cats. And I don't think they did anything to discourage the wildlife, certainly not the possums. In time, there were 71 possums in the roof, and a Mr. Wild came and trapped them. That's how we know how many there were.
He came over and he said, "Son, you're not going to inherit this place." I said, "Oh." He said, "I'm giving it to the people of Sutherland Shire." I think there was a double purpose behind it. At that time, the council were outrating him, and the only way he could possibly continue living here was to donate it to the council. And they in turn used to maintain the property in later years, towards the end of his life. Of course, that was my father's decision to do whatever he liked. And his money he left to the Dogs Home. And his body he left to science. And that's just the way he was. He went to a happier place, over there somewhere, where the flowers are always brighter and the grass is always greener. He was a great believer in apportation, things coming across. And he'd have things, he said, "I got this today, it came across." I accept that. He was no fool.
I think Ben would be very happy with the way it is today. The beautiful art gallery and in the surrounds, everything's so beautifully kept. And it's always a place of peace and quietness and beauty. And I think that's what he would expect it to be.